Welcome to Becoming Untriggered, a podcast brought to you by psychodynamic coaches and parents of three, Lavinia Brown and Andrew Lynn.
Together we normalise and unpack common challenges faced by couples and parents, explore how these could be symptoms of unprocessed trauma, and support you with the tried and tested tools for you to show up as the mum or dad, partner, and person you deserve to be.
Hi there, welcome to the Becoming Untriggered podcast. Today we're talking about work and career and how your inner child or your childhood trauma can influence your career. We're going to talk about how it can affect your choices and your options, why you stay in your job, how you turn up in your job, and how ultimately doing the work can lead to a more purposeful and authentic career. So, Lavinia, do you want to start by talking about how it can affect our choice of jobs?
Yeah, I think until you've done the inner work, until you've separated out which of your beliefs are genuinely, authentically yours, it's very easy to either copy your parents or to choose a career that you feel your parents approve of, but actually you don't even particularly like. Or to do something that you think your parents will reward you for. You'll get that connection with them because it's something that they understand. I know that I certainly did that. I went into the wine trade straight after university. That was my first job because unconsciously that was the connection that I sought with my dad. And my dad was a big wine drinker. I mean, I didn't even realize that. It took me years, decades to realize that. That's not to say it was a crap job, but the motivation for joining was absolutely not really mine. Parental approval, parental connection, and what your parents value. So if your parents value status, if they value high income, if they value intellect, then you're probably going to choose a job that factors that in. And then until you've done that, you're going to be stuck in it. And it's going to cause problems because when you're in a job that isn't suited to who you genuinely are, you're going to be spending a lot of unnecessary effort and energy showing up in a way that isn't authentic.
Yeah, for sure. I know I ended up in my 20s actually working with my stepfather. And I think looking back, that was just because I didn't know what I wanted to do. I just kind of fell into it. So unless you have this childhood experience where you're guided to tap into your purpose and what you enjoy and taught how to forge a career in that, then you're gonna latch on to another influence.
It's kind of the same thing as were you allowed to feel your feelings, really? Were you in a permissive environment?
To get to know yourself.
Yeah. Were you able to be authentic, whether that meant being angry when you were angry or sad when you were sad, or following the curriculum or the subjects that interested you more than what your parents wanted you to? And I definitely didn't.
Yeah, and I think often it comes from this dynamic with rewards and self-worth. We externalize our self-worth when we're young. We get it from our relationship with our parents. So if our parents give us love when we do something good, then we learn, we are trained to like rewards.
That's the whole bonus system.
Exactly.
Delay gratification, be a good girl, be a good boy, and then you will get the payoff.
So unconsciously you need, and that then goes through school. So you do what you're told at school, you get the reward, you get the good grades, you get the reward, and then most likely you're going to seek out a career that carries that. Not one that explores your creativity necessarily, but one that gives you good pay and has got good status and good career progression.
Yeah, and the degree to which, again, that you had to put your own character on hold is going to be reflected on how suited you are to a job where that bonus or that payout is put on hold. Can you wait a year? Can you wait 5 years? Do you have share options if you've been there for 10 years? A lot of careers are based on delaying gratification. And I think the more trained, inverted commas, you were as a child to do that and put your needs on hold or put your parents' needs first, the easier that's going to be.
A lot of these big companies do that. They kind of they pretend they're being nice to you. You can come away for the weekend. You've got an all expenses paid trip. And here's your bonus. But actually, we're taking everything. We're taking your whole life. We're taking all of your time. We're going to reward you, but you're not secure. Okay? You're lucky to be here, and you could lose your job at any moment in time.
So again, if that was something that you experienced as a child, you are lucky to have the parents you do. You are lucky to live in this, which we all, of course we are. Let's not forget, we're talking about first world problems here. But you're lucky to live this life. You're lucky to have us as parents. You're lucky to have this car. You're lucky to go to the school that you go to. Look at how much we've sacrificed. This notion of sacrifice brings reward, that you have to earn through giving your pound of flesh, the success that comes later on, the sense that life is struggle. I think that's the reason that many people end up copying their parents. It's not because they necessarily want to be in the same career that their parents were in, but what's being passed down is the beliefs around the safety of the world, whether you trust people, how much you have to give before you receive. These are the things that get passed down. It's no coincidence, I think, that people that are creative, using that generalized word, stay creative. If your father was a script writer or an actor, or your mother was a playwright, you're more likely to see that as an option. Not necessarily because that was role model, but because those values were passed down.
Yeah, and there's probably some element of where that's natural for your personality if you're like your parents. But yeah, I definitely agree. And I think there's some expectation as well around some of this. Some of the professions, like doctors or lawyer, there's an expectation that you're going to do that kind of thing. You need to follow the family lineage, not let the family down.
And the whole classes thing, which is a big thing in England, perhaps more than America. I think America's more equal. Obviously, there are people that have way too much, people that have way too little. But in England, it's that classist thing of what are middle class jobs, what are professional jobs, what are working class jobs. That's still there. It's still very prevalent. And if you went to a school which your parents had to sacrifice money and time and effort for them to afford, there is going to be an expectation that you're going up a rung on that ladder. I want to touch on another reason we might choose a certain job, because of safety. Many of my clients have actually been through a lot of trauma around one of their parents losing a job, losing a career, going bankrupt, being out of work, and therefore the whole security of the family, the home, everything was put into the balance. And obviously divorce, breakup. If they went to stay with one of the parents who didn't have the bread-winning job, that parent was then really scrapping around to make ends meet, which then leads to probably emotional neglect of some kind, because the mum or the dad was just working so hard. They were out of the house for so long. So all of these forms of trauma then affect my clients' perception of money and career. I have many clients who are in jobs that they don't enjoy, but they are terrified of leaving because they remember what it was like to be in an environment where money wasn't guaranteed, and they didn't know whether they would be evicted or be able to have food on the table.
Yeah, I've witnessed the same thing. And it's almost like there's this underlying narrative of, I never want to experience this again. I'm not going to create this same reality for me. And then that underlying narrative dictates the career choices.
100%. So I know we're going to look at how to heal this later, but to go to that point, when you are living your life in order to avoid old pain, the only way that you can stop that is to go towards that old pain that you've created all of this armor around. When actually, when you felt that pain in an adult body and in a relaxed body, yeah, it's painful. Of course it is. But it's not as painful as the thought of going back there was. Because when you first experienced it, you were a child, you were probably alone, you didn't have the support, you didn't know how to process it. You were a child, you didn't have the psychological maturity. As an adult, it's a very different story. So it's always about recognizing, what is the driver? Why are you in a job that you don't like? What happened in your childhood that has created this fear? And go towards it. Feel it.
100%. All the clients that I work with that have got this narrative, they've actually got the money. right? So it's worked in some way, but they wouldn't be working with me if it didn't create problems in every other area of their life. They've got the money, but they're not happy with the job. Or they've got the money and it's creating a load of conflict at home. So it can solve the problem in the short term, but it can create challenges elsewhere.
I think the point you made about especially big corporate multinationals making you feel that you're lucky, that's a really subtle one that I think a lot of people don't realize they're going through. Oh, we've got a lot of layoffs, like the companies that lay people off every year. You're kind of being held in a trauma zone. It's really unhealthy.
And we know people like that have got good careers. They still get the bonuses. They've been there 20 years, but every time you see them, it's all, you never know.
Yeah.
Jill next door was laid off last week.
No security. So if that's a pattern from childhood of feeling unsafe, that's going to feel familiar. So it's not going to feel that bad, but it's really important to question, do you want to be in a company? Do you want to be a part of a culture that creates unsafety in order to create loyalty? That's not real loyalty. So let's talk about how people show up, how trauma from your childhood might show up. We've got obviously things that look good, things that you wouldn't realize were symptoms of trauma because actually you get rewarded for them. And you've got things that might be sabotaging success. So I want to touch on presenteeism because I think that's a subtle one that people don't realize. And it's a bit like being a workaholic, I guess. Like people talk about absenteeism, but presenteeism is much more of an issue. It's what leads to burnout, overwhelm, the fear that you have of not being seen as a good employee above everything else, and usually your health.
So is that basically them just swapping their parents, which they had to put the parents' needs before theirs, with the company they now work for? Big one for my clients is the people pleaser, which is similar. Presenteeism is a character trait of the people pleaser because it's putting other people's needs before yours. You weren't getting your needs met as a child, and therefore you had to externalize your sense of self, your perspective, to start analyzing how other people felt and change your behavior to make them happy so they would give you attention or love. And then when you put that into the workplace, it's actually a really positive characteristic that's rewarded from the companies. Often these people are great managers. Ultimately, it's a selfish behavior, but essentially you can manage down the chain and you can manage up the chain.
Also, this caring is giving others what you wish you'd received. So the caring professions, like a nurse, a lot of my clients are nurses. They are giving out what they are desperate to receive themselves. And another massive one for my clients, I have a lot of clients that work in A&E, or as anaesthetists, or as high-powered surgeons. It's a real niche, actually. What are they attracted to unconsciously? The thrill, the burnout, the adrenaline rush. I think that's massive. If you had a childhood where stress was a big factor, so you felt quite unsafe most of the time, it's going to feel familiar. That's going to become a skill. You are good in a crisis situation. Not only does it feel familiar, but you're good at remaining calm because you had to remain calm, or you created your own calm as a child.
Well, if your nervous system is dysregulated, it feels that way in a regulated environment. But if you're in a dysregulated environment, you feel regulated. If you're dysregulated, they feel normal.
Yeah, actually, often what comes up is when they become mums, which is why they come to me, is because I don't think it's sustainable to have that degree of drama, stress at work and then at home. So that's where it comes up when you have kids. It's all right to do it at work and then come home to a calm environment or your partner. But to do it at work and then have that presented to you by your kids' unpredictability and noise and chaos, that's when they can't do it anymore.
It was a good point because none of these are sustainable and
No.
none of these work in the long term. So going back to the people pleaser, the people pleaser really struggles to put boundaries in place. So it's kind of good with the carrot when they're managing, but they're not as good with the stick. So they're not too balanced in their management approach. But also they struggle to say no the taking on other people's work. I've got these clients that were just so many projects. They'll even go outside of their department to go and solve a problem over here, just because they're getting all this energy, this love through this achievement and people pleasing and getting congratulated.
Yeah.
But it ends in burnout, it ends in stress, it ends in no energy, nothing to give your family.
Or autoimmune diseases. My clients often have autoimmune diseases that show up because of the way that they are burning out at work. Fibromyalgia, alopecia, Hashimoto's, chronic pain, chronic fatigue. It's not sustainable. Your body can't keep up that level of adrenaline, cortisol. Control freakery, another big one for my clients. If you grew up in an environment where it didn't feel very safe, then you are going to have got very good at creating safety yourself by seemingly being in control of things. Your environment, maybe you were a neat freak. I know I was. I used to reorder my wardrobe. Like, my wardrobe was practically color coordinated, but it helped me feel or gain that sense of calm that just wasn't available. Working for yourself. I mean, I could say that my career now as a self-employed person is partly to do with my inability to work with other people. I end up micromanaging. I do not like delegating because no one does things as well as I do or in the same way that I do. So I don't like it. So I'd rather not work with other people. I don't like working in a team.
Another one that's really relevant, that was relevant for me for so many years and is really painful, is the procrastination imposter syndrome. So the procrastination is fear of failure or fear of getting things wrong, the kind of rejection that comes with that. And there's so many people that have these ideas and have these inspiration and go to create, and then basically sabotage, procrastinate, can't do it, can't put it down, can't put their words or their ideas out there because of the fear of being shut down, the fear of being rejected.
I think there are several strands of procrastination. That's definitely one where you don't actually get something off the ground. My clients procrastinate until the last minute and then they get it done, but it's always at the last minute. It makes them really uncomfortable. And for them, we normally work on the fact that they can only get things done when they're in a trauma state, that adrenaline rush. And again, familiarity of being in that state. It goes back to a childhood that was quite chaotic.
I think that's quite normal. I've heard people say it's normal for men. It's definitely normal for me, where you do the stuff when your back's up against the wall. There is that at work. Well, I guess you've got the external authority looking over you. But I had that at school and I still didn't do it. I still procrastinated my way through school. I procrastinated my way through jobs. And then when you're self-employed, you've got nobody looking over your shoulder.
Maybe that's why you're self-employed, because you'd have got sacked. You can't not deliver. So I just want to make the point that even though you and I are both self-employed, probably because of, in part, trauma that we had in childhood, that doesn't mean that we're in the wrong careers. If you're getting physical symptoms, if you're feeling burnt out, if you're feeling unfulfilled, if you're feeling like you're not meeting your purpose, then these are factors to consider. Why? Why are you in that job?
You're completely right. Just because you chose your career from a point of trauma, or you're staying in your job from a point of trauma, it doesn't necessarily mean it's the wrong job for you. But it means you're tapped into some energy sources that aren't authentic and aren't purposeful, and it's not, maybe not coming from a place of self-love or healing. And therefore, it's worth exploring these things if you do have these symptoms, like you're not happy or you don't have the energy, right? Or you don't feel fulfilled, because we spend a lot of time at work. And like we said, that doesn't mean it's not about being successful, because they might be making you successful at work, but on balance, are they actually a positive thing for your life or not? And if they're not, then there's work that you can do. From a man's point of view, a lot of these things stem from conditional love at childhood. I'm only good if I'm achieving something. I'm only good if I have a job that's connected with status. And that's linked to inner child. So the work is exploring these beliefs, exploring where the origin of them is, going through a process of releasing the emotion and integrating those parts of yourself. And then two things will happen. Number one, you will take ownership of your self-worth and your self-love. And then from that point of view, you can decide whether your job is serving you or not, whether on balance is what you want to do. But also the side effect of healing that part of yourself is that you become a lot more embodied and present because you release all the emotion around that trauma. And in the moment and in the body is where you connect to your inspiration, and your purpose and your joy and what feels good in some decisions that serve you and your family rather than being run by these old programs.
Yeah, and I think for women it's very similar. If you've healed past traumatic experiences, mainly it's an unsafe, unpredictable home, then you are no longer comfortable in an unsafe, unpredictable environment. You no longer tolerate your boss being a bitch or making snide comments or not getting the reward when you deserve it. So you're going to suddenly find that you don't enjoy your job anymore because that dislike or that authenticity is coming out because there's room for it to come out. It's not being suppressed. So yeah, always doing the work, always doing the work. You don't want to take your inner child to work. She doesn't belong at work. If what we discussed was helpful, please subscribe and leave us a 5-star review. For more of the same, check out my social media, The Inner Child Healing Expert, or to work with me, go to laviniabrown.com.
You can find me on andrewlynn.net or Life Coach for Dads on Instagram. We work with both individuals and couples. If there are any topics you'd like us to cover, please reach out. Thanks for listening.